Like, does Bill Gates look at Jeff Bezos's boat and go, man, I don't have one? I don't know. The difference, though, is they both can have one. Like, Jeff Bezos spent $500 million on his
Bill
boat.
Gates is probably, I had a boat like that in the 90s. I don't need one.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the BizDev Podcast, the podcast about developing your business. I'm David Baxter, your host, and I'm joined, per usual, by Gary Voigt. And you know what's fun? It is just us today. When was the last time we did this?
Just the two of us? Just the two of us?
No,
it's been a while. Probably like...
Close to a year,
almost
right?
a year. Yeah, almost a year.
Wow. And now, I'm not that people have been clamoring for it, but it has been a long time since we've done this. We were talking about, before we pushed the button, the big magical recording button, we were talking about old first jobs. And I think that is funny because so we were talking about, my son is about to turn 18. And so I told him, hey man, you need to wait tables, because waiting tables, I believe, is one of the greatest teachers of all of the jobs that you can have, especially when you're young and growing up. I was a waiter for 4 years. When I was in high school and college, I was at 2 years at a place called Owens, which I don't believe exists anymore. Do you guys have Bob Evans where you are? You ever heard of Bob Evans?
There's Bob Evans around, or there used to be. I don't know if they're still around. Are they?
They are here. There is one here. Okay.
It's kind of like a Cracker Barrel-ish type family.
Yeah, breakfast place
style. Yeah, breakfast.
In Texas, they called those Owens because they had a brand called Owens sausage. And around the country, it was called Bob Evans sausage. So it doesn't really matter, but there was a literal, and I remember growing up, there was a farm called Owens, and it literally was the farm. But anyway, the cool thing about it, they didn't serve alcohol, so you could work there at 18.
Well, it's a breakfast place. That'd be crazy.
Actually, you could work there at 16. I'm sorry, I started there at 16. Alcohol, you can serve at 18.
Yeah, but you cannot work as a bartender until you're 21.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. So I started working there at 16. It's a breakfast place, but they were also open for dinner, which of course no one comes to it for dinner. So my tips were trash. But the funny thing is, the goal was to work on the weekends. But of course, all the elderly ladies who worked there, the classic waitress at a breakfast place, a Waffle House or whatever.
Oh yeah.
They would not like the young whippersnapper.
The Dotties and the Irenes.
That's right. In the aprons, they had the apron, the whole bit. I'm trying to remember that one lady. She was British, man. Teresa. Her name was Teresa. Wow. They're classic, like something you'd see in a sitcom kind of waitress. Yeah. That was sweet as all get out to all of her customers, but behind that counter, she was a nightmare. Just a total nightmare to everyone around her. Because this was her livelihood, right? This was her job, 40 hours a week, right? This was her job. And you weren't getting in the way of her tips. You weren't getting in the way. The biggest difference now, and now I'm off again on a tangent.
Yeah, we were talking about why it would be such a good first job. Or not first, but a good job to have.
Good early job, yeah. The early job, the reason why it's dealing with people, right? Waiting tables, I believe, is the best training because you're dealing with every kind of person. Every race, every age, everything. And it's great because you get to meet nice people and mean people and jerks and sweet people and all of that. And you start to develop patterns. I mean, I guess technically it's a stereotype, but it's not stereotype when it's actually your experience, I don't think. You've waited on this type of person and going into that you're going to get a good tip or a bad tip just because you've done this 1,000 times. And you still have to treat them the same way.
Yeah, just as they sit down and you look over, the hostess comes up and says like, hey, I sat another in your section. You glance around and you immediately make assumptions just based on
how this is going to go.
How they look around, how they sit down, what they do with their
I had this
stuff in front of them.
Elderly gentleman that told me from the jump, I only give God 10%. Why would I give you more? Okay. That's the end of that. I mean, okay, buddy. That's good justification. Done. All right. I have to treat you great either. The worst though, I will say easily, the worst were teenagers who would come in. Again, I worked at night. So teenagers would come in, and this is back when they had smoking sections, like back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
They would come in. There'd be 3 or 4 of them. They'd have 1 or 2 cups of coffee for the whole table. And they would sit there for 4 hours smoking, because it was, the 90s, and studying. I'm putting air quotes there. And they would just want 8,000 refills. And then they'd leave and give me $1. That was
$1 wasn't bad for that. Usually they come with just a couple cents more than what they're actually going to buy.
Just what they have to pay.
They think since you're not running back and forth with food, they don't owe you a tip, but they also don't realize that they've been there for 3 hours, which eliminates the, factor that you could have had 2 or 3 more tables flip over and give you money. But
yeah, I was thinking about the difference between today and back when I did it. Back when I did it, it was almost all cash. My tips were cash. People would joke that I was a stripper because I had so many ones. I mean, just hundreds.
Like a wad of cash and a rubber band for rent.
Yeah. I mean, hundreds of ones. And it was, now everything's credit card. It must be 98% credit card now.
Yeah. When I was working as a waiter, it was about 50-50 and started leaning more towards paying with a card, but leaving the tip in cash.
Yeah, I could see that. Mine was probably 80-20 cash for whatever reason back then in Texas. Of course there were credit cards, but it wasn't super convenient.
Now you could just go into a restaurant and pay with your phone from a QR code you scan because they don't give you a menu.
Yeah, that's even crazier because of COVID. Yeah. So I think, we're beating this dead horse, but it's fun to think about early jobs. My first job was actually CC's, but we won't go into that, even though I do love CC's pizza, and there are no more of them anywhere in North Carolina. It's very sad.
They were serving cardboard with ketchup on it. It was disgusting.
You're so wrong. This is why I don't like you. All right. So that we're talking about jobs and first jobs. And one of the things that you brought up recently was I ask a lot about our guests, what we do in the first year, how hard it is. And we just happened to cross our 10-year this year. And so I thought it'd be interesting to chat about what that's like running a company 10 years and what your 10th year potentially, of course, that's going to be different for everybody, but what was ours like?
What was our story?
It was fun in general. Like for 10 years, like here's some highlights that were really fun. We're a remote company, and we had everyone come together. We met in Tennessee in one of those big old houses, and we had everybody come together, and we met almost everyone. Not everyone could make it. Siwa had just had a baby, loser. And it's amazing how many big pixel babies. We have 2 people pregnant right now. This is a small company.
Baby pixels.
We got 2 people pregnant right now. Little pixels. Right now, yeah. One of our guys, Scott, is probably going to have his baby before this is even published. So congrats, Scott.
Before this is done recording. Could be anything.
Before it's done recording. We're all waiting to see when we are like, hey, guys, I'm out. I'm like, okay, cool. And so we got to do that and got to meet everybody. And that was really, really a lot of fun. That was something I'd wanted to do for a long time. Carl, who is one of our project managers, who's been with me the longest, we gave him his 5-year award, which was a big cube, glass cube that was orange.
Giant 6-pound glass pixel.
Oh my gosh. It was so heavy. I have that. Long story. Awesome. We had 2 of them made on accident because one was messed up. Well, I kept the messed up one. So I've like the largest paperweight in the world. It's just huge. But it's sitting on my coffee table out there. So it was fun. I feel like this year we kind of really hit, I felt like a bigger company for the first time. We've got a little beyond survival mode, which is something I talk about a lot with startups and stuff like that. You got to get past that. I feel like we're getting past that. I still get nervous. Like I'm 6 months out.
Yeah. Not
6 weeks out.
It feels like, just from how long I've been here, like I've been working with you for a while, but as an employee for almost 3, going on 3 years, or a little past 3 years?
Yeah, getting on close to 3. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Feels like 50. But anyways.
Yeah, fair. You look like you worked for me for 50 years.
Witness, I guess you could say, and feel the foundation of the company, like, stayed strong, and it's being built up from there. It doesn't feel, it feels a lot more stable and progressive moving forward. If you know what I mean, the trend has been, it's probably because it's since I started. That's probably why. But
well, sure. Yeah. Your little boxes and arrows is what's changed it
drawing
completely.
rectangles is one of the greatest jobs in the world, to be honest with you.
Super important. Yes.
No, but it does feel like the company is in a positive and forward trajectory with enough of a steady and solid foundation that we have, you know, I don't feel like we're not going to be able to impress new clients, you know what I mean? And then keep that ball rolling forward.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what shifts when you get out of survival mode and you start talking, like we talked a few weeks ago about marketing and getting assets and getting your stuff ready to use a marketing company. I think one of the things that I was wrong about in most of my career was I thought you could just hire a sales guy and they would just go do that. I thought you would just go hire a marketing guy and they would just go do that. And it doesn't work that way. And that's true for almost any position, but especially when you talk about sales and marketing and stuff like that, most of the guys who are hungry and will go and get a cold lead is very rare. And you think that they're common, but they're not. Most sales guys want the lead handed to them and then they will go chase it. And marketing is the same thing, is to start from nothing and create that brand and that stuff is not something most marketers can do. Designers even. I mean, they can make pretty things, but they're not creating a brand. That's a different thing. And I think I think that's largely because of you. But even more in the last 18 months, more than just this year, we have really focused on honing in what our brand is.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably been 2 years because I turned the brand over to you 2 years ago, almost to the day. It was late October because I know that because we did our new logo.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, since we've started actually building the brand and creating more of a presence and really trying to pull that personality of the company. I call it personality just because that's how I see it sometimes, but making that voice and that narrative around the company as how we're going to present ourselves to the market and just doing as much as we can with getting our name out there and trying to get our face out there and social media channels through this podcast and just with you networking with clients and stuff like that. I think we definitely have established a bigger brand awareness of ourselves.
Sure. I mean, at least in our local area. Yeah. I think, and the reason I think it's a worthwhile thing, I mean, I'm not trying to beat our own drum or anything like that. There's companies who I'm very in my business group that are way younger than me, that are way larger than me. So certainly we are not the growing like a weed or anything. But what I think is fun and I think it's worth doing is once you're out of the weeds, once you're out of that survival mode, to take a moment to look back and recognize what you have accomplished. If your company, if your company is 5 years old, you are in a very rare place. Your business is in a very rare place. Because, the statistics are pretty brutal. It's 80% die within 2 years. And then of those, that 20%, another something like 80%, I don't have those quotes in front of me, but it's close to that. Another 80% will die before 5 years, right? I don't attribute anything because I'm useless, but that's, you can go find that stuff on the internet. I'm not making that up, but it's crazy. So if you've lasted those 5 years, you're in a very rare air and you should take stock of that and be proud of that. And what's interesting is after 5 years, the stats don't get, it's not like another 80% die before 10 years. That's not how that works. And it kind of plateaus because you figured it out.
Yeah.
Here's a fun stat for you. I don't know if I've ever asked you this. What country is known for having the oldest companies?
What country has the oldest companies?
Yes.
I would say Africa or China would be the place. So I'm going to say, actually, I have no idea.
Don't hurt yourself, dude.
go out on a limb and say Sicily in Italy.
Nice. No, the answer to that is Japan. There are more companies there that are over 700 years old. 700 years old. And what's interesting is there's a practice over there, and I'm certainly no expert, but we studied a little bit in the business group, and they have a practice to think of to build your core values for the long term. Your core values and your mission, so that you're like, you can imagine Samsung, and that's a Korean company. That's not fair. Toyota. There we go. I don't think they're actually 700 years old, but imagine whatever that company is doing today. 700 years ago, they certainly were doing something totally different, right? And that's kind of like, but their mission theoretically could be the same. And that's kind of the vision casting. When you, what would you be doing? What are you doing now in terms of how are you bringing value that could last that long? It's kind of an interesting thought experiment. Like, what is Big Pixel in 500 years? Certainly, we're not building mobile apps and web apps.
500 years?
I mean,
some sort of biotech, right?
It's so crazy to think of. Like, I used
to be, have manufacturing plants on different planets.
On different planets, that's fair.
Yeah.
Different species of humans that we're building things for. It's really interesting to me.
Wormhole navigation systems.
Perfect. We got to start on that now.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I'm going to go wander off again. 100 years ago, the difference between a grandparent and a grandchild, right? And what their life was going to look like, for the most part, generally the same. How you grew up when you were from the 1830s versus the 1860s or 1870s, largely similar. Not a huge difference. But the difference between just me and my children, one generation, not even two, is so crazy. The way I grew up, pre-social media, pre-internet, and what my kids do every single day, mind-blowing. And the idea, and so my point is technology is so much faster now. And what my grandkids are going to be doing, at this point, I honestly can't even imagine what that looks like with AI and self-driving cars and doodads and gizmos on your face and tattoos or whatever it's going to be. I mean, we're going to miniaturize everything at that point. You're not going to need to drive anymore. You're going to have an AI in everything you touch. It's crazy. And it's just
still no hoverboard.
So like, no hoverboard. No, I'm very sorry to tell you that. I was one of those people who fell for that when they did Back to the Future.
Yeah.
When they did that, and they came out with those ads to make the hoverboard look real. I'm dating myself horribly right now. But I thought that was real. I thought I was going to get one, and no, they weren't real. And then someone coined the phrase hoverboard for those ugly little gyro scooters that caught fire all the time. So now they're well and truly dead.
They caught fire?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about that.
The original hoverboards was made by a specific company, right? I can't remember the name of the company. And they did really, really, really well, right? They became the Christmas gift like 5 years ago or whatever. And because they got so hot, a bunch of knockoffs started getting made.
Okay.
And they caught fire. Yeah.
Big Pixel builds world-class custom software and amazing apps. Our team of pros puts passion into every one of our projects. Our design-infused development leans heavily on delivering a great experience for our clients and their clients. From startups to enterprises, we can help craft your ideas into real-world products that help your business do better business.
All right, so let me ask you this then. Since you're not a new business owner, an entrepreneur, or a startup, after 10 years, what are your top 3 pieces of advice?
Oh, gosh. That went a different direction than I thought of. All right. Okay. Okay.
Direction you think would be of value to
I need to couch me in here. Is it how to get to 10 years? Because I'm probably not the best person to ask for that. Is it what I would give for the next 10 years? Like, give me a couch.
Okay. Let me say After 10 years, so as of now, with all the experience that you've gained, what would you say are 3 pieces of advice you would give to a business owner to continue or grow from this place?
I think the first one I would say is...
Or what 3 things do you think helped you achieve success to get to 10 years?
Man, that one's harder. I think what I would tell someone if they're trying to get to 10 years or they're trying to go for the next 10 years, the number one thing is just to know why you're doing this. You've got to know your why. And I know you could say that at 1 year as well, but it becomes more important because what you do will change. We used to build websites. Like that was a big part of our business for years. We don't hardly do websites at all anymore. We do a few, but hardly. And our business just went in a different direction. Some of the stuff we do now, I never would imagine that we would be doing. And so, but our core values and how we want to treat people, I think has been the guidepost. I would say at this stage, what I focus on more than anything now is culture and my people, me as a leader. That is my heartbeat. And that's important because I think we've said this a million times, culture matters. But when you finally get out of survival mode and you can stick your head above water and you have time to work on the business, not in the business, that's a classic phrase there, you can decide what's important to you. And some people, it's going to be big projects, big new things. Some people, it's going to be new initiatives and focusing on clients. I would say that the number one thing you need to focus on is to make sure you have a good culture. Maybe that's not your job specifically as the leader, but you need to make sure that someone is beating that drum every day. And if it's not you, that better be someone who's very high up. I say that's probably the one major thing that I think a lot of people don't do well.
I can tell you there's a piece of advice that my uncle gave me. He was an entrepreneur. He created and ran a couple different businesses and sold them. But the one thing he told me when I first started to freelance, he's like, don't ever be afraid to bet on yourself, and always know that you're never going to make as much money working for someone else as you do for yourself. And he said, it's not about the money, but it's about the earning. He goes, you earned every penny of it, and there's not someone taking it away from you for your hard work. So
yeah,
in a weird sense, when you say you start your business not because you need a job, you probably already have the mindset that you want to build something better for yourself. Like you said, that's not just getting a paycheck from a company that you don't care about just so you can earn money or just so you can make money. It's about earning to your potential.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject because it can go either way, right? Money is one of those things, and maybe that's the right way to look at this. It could go either way. I have known business owners that just take everything they can off the top, and the company never really flourishes because the owner is engorging themselves, for lack of a better term. And when I started my company, that was one thing I was running away from because the company I worked for before, the owner did that just blatantly. Just took all the profit off the top, and there was no room to grow. There was no room to breathe. We got stuck. And I hated that. But at the same time, you don't want to be the other side of it where you don't pay yourself anything. And you start looking back and you're like, I'm getting paid very, very little. I've seen both sides of this. And there's nothing wrong with some, balancing that. But the money thing, it gets super uncomfortable for people. Because you don't want to be living high on the hog and your people are doing poorly. So that's kind of, if it feels bad.
It probably is bad.
Then you're probably doing something wrong. I mean, the average, here's a fun stat. The average CEO, if you know the answer to this, because I've already told you this, then pretend you're dumb. That's not hard. The average difference between the CEO and worker in America, what do you think it is?
225%.
571 times. The average CEO of an American corporation makes 571 times, not percent, times what their average worker does.
Let me go throw up real quick. Be right back. That's so insane.
The worst is, I believe it was Live Nation. I could be wrong. Ticketmaster or Live Nation is one of those kind of guys. The CEO made 2,200 times his average worker. Here's in that same story that I read.
How do you keep employees?
They don't know. First off,
okay, yeah, that's probably true. But I mean, talk about feeling like just a number on a spreadsheet with no value at all, man.
The average salary for a major car manufacturer in Europe, $9 million. In America, $29 million. So you're talking about the CEO of Ford makes like 29 million bucks. The CEO of Volkswagen or something like that, BMW, I'm not sure the exact one. I never know who owns who.
Let's just say a European,
but an equivalent company, European car company, 9 million. That they're doing the same job, but at the same time, let me flip it around.
It's just America's got a greed problem.
They do have a greed problem, but here's the thing: it's like, how could one person be worth that kind of money? Maybe not that kind of money, but let's say $1 million, $5 million. Well, here's what you're asking: how many people in this world can run $100 million company? 1,000 people? Maybe.
Well, it just depends on how many companies are $100 million companies. There's always going to be someone to fill that role.
But there's a very small pool of people who can do that successfully.
What person can grow a company to that? Not one.
Just
person, no.
I mean, that skill set of being a CEO who could run Apple. Tim Cook is gone. They have to replace him. How many people on this planet could do what Tim Cook is doing? I bet it's not more than my fingers.
Yeah. Okay. That's
what I'm trying to say is that person, and he's an extreme example, but if Salesforce, Ford, whatever, all those CEOs, that person, that lady, that guy, they are literally a 1 in a 10 million kind of person. So are they worth that? I don't know. But it's an interesting, and when you flip it, you say, well, how could that one person be worth? They have 500,000 employees. Well, probably none of those 500,000 employees can do what that person's doing, flat out, because what they're doing is incredibly difficult. But I'm not saying that they should be paid that. Please don't get me wrong. I am saying, though, what they do is very hard and should not be. They deserve to get paid. Maybe not 29 million.
Yeah, I think it gets egregious when a CEO is hired for a job and in their contract, they have it written where even if they fail, they get, a payout or a golden parachute, if you will. And
those drive me nuts. The golden parachute
is more than, 90% of the company's CEO's salary for a year. What motivation in the world do they have? You know what I mean? Like at some point, yes, maybe the people who run giant companies like that make millions of dollars have a skill set that they've honed for years and have very good business acumen, and they kind of been trained on their way up the ladder to that point. Yeah, maybe not. There's not a lot of people that could do that job. But like you said, does that job necessarily mean you're worth getting paid, hundreds of millions of dollars for failing?
Sure. No, I the golden parachute, I think, is disgusting.
A couple of $100 million for succeeding. It's ridiculous.
Well, okay, let's use Elon Musk as an example.
Let's not.
Elon Musk made a deal. Sure. Take him as a freakazoid away for just a moment. When years ago, I think 5-10 years ago, he made a deal with Tesla that I'm going to grow this company to $100 billion. I don't remember the exact number, but it was something like that. And I'm going to do that in 5 years. And if I do that, I'm going to take a small salary each year, but you're going to give me, if I hit these targets, let's say 100 billion, that means let's say 20 billion each year, I've got to grow in market cap. And if I do that, then you have to give me a big chunk of stock. And they're like, his goals were insane. No one had ever built a company that fast. So they said, okay. And he does it. He absolutely does it. And by the end of it, his agreement, he got enough stock, it was worth over $50 billion. Now, he made very little money in between. He was already rich, but he didn't make much money in between. But he's like, I got a target. You're going to pay me if I make it. And if I don't, you don't pay me. But then he did it. And everyone was mad about how egregious he got paid. He literally put that company on his back and ran. No one can deny that in early Tesla days. You just can't. Just like you can't deny right now in SpaceX days.
Yeah, early Tesla days was a phenomenal success.
Just the fact that what he was able to do, and is even still doing to a point. I mean, Cybertruck, put that to the side.
Tesla's become more of a joke than a success lately, though.
You say that they still are the number one. They are the number one car manufacturer in the world. How crazy is that? That company's less than 20 years old. That's bigger than, it's just crazy, crazy. And I'm not giving him all the credit, but he certainly deserves some of it. But I'm just saying, he got paid a ridiculous amount of money. Did he earn that? No one else in the world could have done what he did. Clearly, because people have tried. Right? You take SpaceX. People have tried to do commercial rockets since NASA started. He's the only one who ever did it until he did it. Now there are several people who've done it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, my personal thing is I have always believed in what I call a lifestyle cap, which means at some point, I think, and I'm not sure what that number is. I haven't hit it. But it's a number that I think if I go north of that, I'm engorging myself. I don't want to be that guy who has 5 houses. I don't want to be that guy who's got a fleet of cars. I don't want to be like, I was watching a YouTube video about this house. It was 20,000 square foot. And I said, here's the crazy part. I bet you $10 that's not even their main house. Boom. We find out, no, it was their vacation home. Like, I don't ever want to be, no matter how successful Big Pixel got, right? I don't want to be that guy. There are better things to do with money to me. And I believe that very strongly. And I think every CEO should ask themselves, how much more are you getting paid than your people? It should be more. You should get paid more. And that multiplier could easily be 5, 10, even 20 times. That's a personal decision. But if you're getting north of that, in my opinion, you're just engorging yourself. I just don't believe you're bringing that much value. Even everything I just said, I was mostly playing devil's advocate for the last bit. But I just think that every CEO needs to take a moment to decide what kind of person they want to be and how they want their employees to view them. And that's a personal decision. Not everyone, even in my business group, right? It's a Christian business group, and very few people agree with me. And that doesn't make them wrong. Well, I'm going to be clear on that. This is a personal thing. But I think everyone who owns a business and is seeing success from that business should at least ask themselves the question. I was reading an article that reminds me. I read this today. They were talking about bodybuilding and how performance enhancing drugs and steroids are just off the charts. Like especially young people, 16 to 25, believe that the only way you can get muscular in today's world is to fill yourself full of chemicals.
It's a cheat code for them.
The point of it was, though, is there's an old adage in bodybuilding is, welcome to lifting heavy, your eternal quest to feel small. Because no matter how big you get, you always will feel small. You will always see that imperfection in your bicep or whatever. And it's kind of the same thing when you're hanging around the richest of the rich.
Yeah. And
you look around and you're like, well, I don't have a boat. Wait a minute. His car is nicer than mine. Wait a minute. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now and even social media, it's even more insane. But like, does Bill Gates look at Jeff Bezos's boat and go, man, I don't have one. I don't know. The difference though is they both can have one. Like Jeff Bezos spent $500 million on his
Bill
boat.
Gates is probably, I had a boat like that in the 90s. I don't need one.
Yeah, I don't need one anymore. But it's like, it's not a matter of can they both afford it. Of course they both can. He could have spent $1 billion on his boat, whatever.
Yeah.
But now it's a matter of time. I don't have time to pour myself in to building a $500 million boat. So I'm not going to do that. Different world. But I don't know. I think it's worth asking. I think those are the questions. I'm going to loop this all back around. Here we go. I think those are the questions that you start asking yourself at 10 years that you do not ask yourself at 1. Because you now have some success. And again, Big Pixel is not, I'm not floating in casual. There's no Scrooge McDuck going on here. I know some Scrooge McDucks, and some of them are the most humble human beings I've ever met. And some of them are complete jerks. Dave Ramsey says money doesn't change a person. It magnifies the person. If you were good before, you're going to be great. If you were a jerk before, you're going to be a bigger jerk. And in my experience, now that I know a lot of rich people, that's 100% true. 100%.
All right. So we talked about the culture, and you talked about asking yourself what kind of success you're looking for. Is there a third one, or do you think those two cover it so far?
I think my next thing, which I'm not thinking about now, but that I need to be in the next 10 years, because I'm 45. Gary's 72, by the way, in case anybody was wondering.
71 and a half.
Yeah. Okay. My bad. Birthday's coming up. I see this in business guys that I know and ladies that I know is legacy.
What are you going to do with the company to set it up for when you're gone?
I was very touched. And Gary doesn't know I'm going to say this. I was very touched. So we had our leadership conference a couple months ago. And so all of my guys were here and we were talking. And I asked the question, I don't remember how it even came up, but I asked, hey, if I died, what would you want to do with the company? Would you want my wife, who would own it, of course, to just wrap it up in a bow and shut it down? Or would you want to continue to run it? And without skipping a beat, every single person in that room was like, no, absolutely. We would want to run that. We would want to keep it going. We would want to do that as your legacy. And that was very touching to me, but it's very interesting. Like, I don't think of legacy yet. Again, 45, it's not really something, you don't think about dying yet. But a lot of my friends do, when they're in their upper 50s, early 60s, they're talking about retiring and not even necessarily dying, but just changing their lives dramatically.
Yeah.
I think that's my next big thing, is to figure out not necessarily what I'm going to do, but you have to start thinking about succession. What does that look like? You have to start thinking about,
if your goal is not to just bring a company up and sell it. Yeah. If it's something that you wanted to continue on, because there are some people that just, their goal is to just sell.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Right.
In my world, though, there is no big cash out for a services company. Unless there are ways to make it better, but most companies have a multiplier. When you say, I'm going to sell, like, software is the craziest. If Facebook, the reason they're worth so much is because their multiplier is like 300x, 100x, because adding a new customer costs them pennies. It makes them dollars. When you come to a service company, the multiplier is half. So the general rule of thumb is the value of your company is that someone's willing to pay, generally speaking, for a services company, is whatever your revenue is, average usually over 3 years, divide that in 2. That's the value of your company. Now, that can still be a nice payday if you built a really big services firm. But when you compare that to, I have a manufacturing gizmo or whatever, and your multiplier is 3 or 5. So there is no big payday for someone like me. Not really.
Yeah, we actually talked about this. One of our guests is a business broker, and we talked about the ins and outs of different types of businesses. Yeah. And which ones sell and which ones don't.
My dream would be to let my kids run it. Neither of my children care less about.
They haven't even been waiters yet or waitresses yet.
That's fair. They have not.
They have to do that first.
You have to be a waiter for 2 years before you can come work at Big Pistol.
I wanted to mention one thing about the culture. Sorry.
Okay. No.
You were talking about culture and how it's becomes really important to you. And I just wanted to mention that that's something that you can't just finish. Like you're never just like, all right, we've established a good culture. Wipe your hands. We know what to do. Move on. That's something that's always going to evolve with just the people that you have or people you bring on. People leave. Society changes. People's attitudes change through different customers and clients that we have to work for. People, can kind of change and evolve. So the culture thing is always going to be something that you have to pay attention to and take care of. And I think that's a good goal to have. So I agree with you on that one.
Can I add a little addendum to that? That same exact statement, replace the word culture with networking. You're never finished.
Well, that's true.
I will tell you, I thought I was done. I might have told this story before.
Yeah, you thought you didn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, 2019, 2018, we're 8 years old. We had clients. We're good. I thought I was done. I didn't think I had to do that anymore. Yeah, that's dumb. Let me just call it out. You're an idiot. I'm taking myself, but anyone else who's agreeing with me, you're an idiot. Networking is never done. So same thing. I was just saying, take everything you just said about culture and put the word networking. Still true.
So 10 years, giant lessons from a business mogul, David Baxter, who's swimming in it.
There's no mogul here.
So you said you were Scrooge McDuck.
No, I said
that always made me mad because like anybody diving into all those coins, you're breaking stuff and you're not swimming. But I love that.
I've always thought that was such an interesting thing. Yeah, because and they were all gold coins. Like, holy cow!
Oh, yeah, there might be a little softer, but still, that's a lot of weight.
the upper body strength that Scrooge McDuck must have.
He was a scrawny guy.
Solid metal coins.
Granted, he was a duck, so he already can swim. But I mean,
yeah. It never made much sense. Well, the weird part, I think it was even during the intro. Wouldn't he come up and blow it like it was liquid?
Spit it out like it was water.
And spitting out the coins?
Like, I think he might have had like a mask and a snorkel.
Yes, there was a mask and a snorkel. Because you need to be able to see when you're under the solid metal.
Through the gold.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Someone should do the math of how the upper body strength you must have to swim through gold
Scrooge
coins.
McDuck vault of gold. That'd be funny.
You must have to be able to bench press like 1,000 pounds.
Well, talk about performance enhancing drugs. Yeah.
Scrooge McDuck is totally jacked.
See, we wrapped it all back together.
Jacked. Yeah, we did. Well done. Go us. That's pros right there.
And we didn't even talk
about that note, we're going to get out of here.
AI and Chat GPT.
We didn't talk about AI once. Not once.
Nope.
We're not going to either. We're not, because that is a mess right now. All right. Thank you for joining me. This was fun.
And if anybody wants to learn more about your business, where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm DB Baxter, I think is my actual name on there. And you can find us at thebigpixel.net. That is where you can see all of Gary's modicum of talent shown off for our branding and all that good stuff. There you go.
All right. Then we will see everybody next week. Take care.